Hi everyone. So today we are going to look at a very interesting system for white, and this is against the Dutch defense. So this occurs on the board after d4 f5. Now this move to the layman's eye looks very dubious. You're opening up the diagonal towards your king, you're opening up this diagonal where your king is going to sit, by the way, after castling, and all of this looks very dubious, but this has proper theory and this is a well-known opening, and black can employ this against d4. So now there are many systems for white to play. You can of course play c4, you can play g3, you can play many other systems, but the move I'm suggesting is basically e4. It's a gambit, of course. And now after f takes e4, I am suggesting the move knight to d2, which is known as the American Gambit, which basically keeps this pawn on c2 flexible. It can move to c2 from c2 to c3 or even c4 later on, and this has not been played much at all. It basically has 5 games in the database up till now in the entire history of chess, and this is something new and exciting as we are going to look at this system now. So starting with this position, black has two options. He can play knight f6 to protect the pawn, or he can play d5. So let's cover them one by one. So we are starting with knight f6, and here white plays the move f3. So now he is ready to sacrifice his pawn for sure, and after black takes, white takes. So what does white get here for the pawn he has sacrificed? He gets development, he gets the open F file, and he also gets this open diagonal. And you can see white has two pieces developed, he has the open F file, and black has basically almost no pieces developed apart from this knight. So now black plays the move d5 to open up his pieces, and now bishop d3, white wants to castle, and now black has many options. Now if he plays something like c5, white has the interesting move knight g5, so basically using the weakness of these light squares around black's king. And after some, let's say if black plays g6, then simply knight takes h7, knight takes h7, bishop g6 check, king d7, queen h5, and the knight is basically pinned, and this is going to be bad for black. So now if he plays something like bishop g4, you just push the bishop back, takes, and now look at these weak light squares on e6 and f7. This looks horrendous. For example, if black plays c takes d4, he captures the pawn. You play castles. We are not going to hurry to capture this pawn. Knight c6 and rook takes f6. So black cannot capture with this pawn. So he has to capture here. Now queen h5, king d7, and now knight f7. So basically attacking both the queen and the rook. So queen e8 is the only move because it pins the knight. But now simply queen takes d5, king c7, and knight takes h8. And white is completely winning. So if this is not an option for black, let's say he plays knight c6, now knight f3, because now black was threatening to capture with the knight. That would have been serious. So let's say knight takes d4, takes, and uses castle again, and look at black's king. He's stuck in the center. In practical play, this is absolutely lost. So let's say queen b6, threatening something like d3, so king h1. And now let's say if he plays queen a6, you play queen to e1, and maintaining this pressure on the black king. And after rook c8, bishop f4, rook takes c2, queen e5, h6, queen b8, king d7, knight f3, bringing the knight in the attack as well, g6. Well, what else? He has to develop these pieces. These pieces are basically just sitting on the board doing nothing. So then you play knight e5, king e6, rook e1, and look at black's king in the center, and look at white's pieces all attacking the black king. Black is not going to survive this. So this is an interesting idea. So let's say he basically does not play bishop g4. He plays something like h6 now, but then just bishop g6 and knight f7. This is completely lost. So let's say he plays something else. He plays e6. Now this is going to transpose in some sort of French structure. But the advantage is that black did not expect to play the French defense here. He basically wanted to play the Dutch, and you've already got him out of his comfort zone. And it's not so easy for black to play with this pawn structure. When his bishop is behind these pawns, this knight doesn't have a decent square. The e5 square is available for white. You need to have an understanding of the French structure in depth to actually play this over the board as black. So you've already got what you want. Your opponent is nervous and out of his comfort zone. And the move here, which was played in the only game in which this has ever occurred, was bishop g4, and that looks very logical. You push the bishop out of your pawn chain, and now you want to play e6, but this is actually a mistake, and white just castles. Now knight c6, and now you play simply h3. In the game, white played c3, queen d7, and then he played queen a4. Here, queen e1 was even better. So h3 is actually even the better choice. Bishop h5 and then queen e1. So you get rid of this pin, and then you prepare something like knight e5 at the correct point, and then you point your queen towards black's king. So knight b4, knight b3, takes. Let's say black plays bishop g6, and now knight c5. You can look at these weak squares. This is very, very, very bad for black. So this is not working out for black at all. So knight f3 is already, I think, not the best practical bet for black. He should ideally play d5 first. This can also transpose from knight f6, f3, and now d5 can be played, and this will transpose to d5. So now let's say he plays d5. Again, you play f3. We want to get the pieces developed, and black plays knight f6, and now you play c3. So c3 protects the pawn on d4, and that highlights the benefit of the knight on d2, that you are not really weakening your d4 pawn at all. So now black has many responses, but I think the two main moves could be either e6 or it could be c5. So let's look at both of them. Let's say black plays the move c5 and you just capture on e4. Now d takes e4 and now d takes c5. So basically you have got your pawn back for the time being. Black plays e6 to capture it back, and now knight h3. So basically you are going to try and round up this pawn in the favorable scenario where black has a central pawn on e6 which is isolated and weak, and if you can manage to hold on, then suddenly white has an excellent position in the endgame. So bishop c5, knight g5, e3. Well, this pawn was hanging, so what else? And now you play knight e4, allowing the exchange of queens, but after something like bishop e7, just bishop takes e3, and you compare the position now. If black plays knight c6, king c2, h6, knight takes, pawn takes, knight e4, f5, knight c5, and something like this will occur. And now this is absolutely, absolutely amazing for white, because look at black's king here. It's out on b6. This looks ridiculous, to be honest. And after knight a4, the troubles have not really ended for black, and it will keep going on. And look at this king on a6. I think we can all understand this is almost lost for black. So this is also an interesting idea. And if black were to go with the bishop to b6, not allowing white to capture on e3, then you can play knight d6 check, king d7, and knight c4. So attacking this bishop. All white wants is to capture this pawn, and then the material will be equal, but black will have this weakness on e6, and white will have a solid pawn structure. So bishop c7, king c2, knight c6, and bishop takes e3, and you can look at this weak pawn on e6, and white has tremendous pieces, and black's king on d7 looks very weak. So this is also not working for black. So let's say he plays the move e6 here, and after f takes e4, black has two options. Knight takes e4 is not the correct choice, because takes, queen h5, g6, and queen e5. You attack the rook. Now after rook g8, you just play bishop c4, attacking the pawn, and then it's again very, very difficult for black. What is his king going to do? Where is it going to castle to? So black has to capture with the pawn, and now you play bishop c4, just developing your pieces. After c5, queen e2, and if c takes d4, knight takes e4, black has to capture the pawn, otherwise what has he got for his horrible pawn structure and weak king? Pawn takes, and let's say he plays knight e4, queen f6, bishop d2, bishop d6, knight f3, both sides castle, and after knight c6, knight g5. So white is already threatening checkmate, and after g6, of course, the queen would be lost. So queen g6 takes, rook f8, king f8, rook f1, and it doesn't take a genius to understand that with these two pieces stuck here, these weak pawns, black is completely lost in this position. Rook f7 is coming with devastating attack. So This is also not working out for black. And finally, if he plays, let's say, he plays bishop e7 here. Now you play knight g5 again, focusing on this focal point, which is very, very weak for black. Now after queen d6, just taking here, takes, knight c6, knight f3. And now the problem is black cannot castle on any side of the board. He cannot go this side, the g8 square is covered. He cannot go this side because the c8 square is covered. And this is horrible for black. So rook d8, rook b1, attacking b7, b6, and castles. And now you compare the kings. White's king is safely tucked. He can also go to h1 to even safen his king. And black's king is stuck on e8 forever. So after queen d3, trying to exchange queens, of course, white can play this rook b2. He can also play queen e1, not this, queen e1, of course. But rook b2 is a very nice move. It after takes, the rook gets to the e2 square and still not clear how black's king is going to get out of this mess. So rook d3, bishop b3, king d7, bishop a4, bishop d6, knight d4, rook c8, and now bishop b2. White even has the luxury to develop his pieces first, and then he's going to capture on c6 with a winning position. I hope you liked the video. Do like and subscribe and check out other content on the channel. We have plenty of amazing videos to choose from, and do take care.